Shalom, and welcome to What the Watchman Sees, a ministry that will sift through all of the social media noise to show you news of importance from the Most High's perspective. As watchmen, we are here both to warn of dangers and give biblical answers for dwelling in the secret place of the Most High during these times of confusion. Tell your family and friends to like, share, and subscribe as we delve into what Yahweh has for us, the apple of His eye. Let's get to work. Say Shabbat Shalom to everyone. We're going to continue with our meditation. We're still in Romans, the 12th and 13th chapter. The Most High has given the instruction to many of His servants and teachers that it is His word that brings about conversion. It is His word that is our secret place. It is His word that gives us instructions for righteousness as we continue to use 2 Timothy chapter 3, verse 16 as one of our guiding scriptures. So what we're going to do first during this meditation is to read from Romans chapter 12. We've done this before, but the Most High is not finished with what He wants us to know. So we're going to do that. Romans chapter 12, beginning at verse 1. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of the Most High, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto Yahuwah, which is your reasonable service. And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Yahuwah. For I say, through the grace given unto me, to every man that is among you not to think more highly than he ought to think of himself, but to think soberly, according as the Most High has dealt to every man in the measure, let me read that again. But to think soberly, according as Yahuwah has dealt to every man the measure of faith. For as we have many members in one body, and all members have not the same office, so we, being many, are one body in Messiah, and every one members one of another. Having then gifts differing according to the grace that is given to us, whether prophecy, let us prophesy according to the proportion of faith, or ministry, let us wait on our ministering, or he that teaches on teaching, or he that exhorts on exhortation, he that gives, let him do it with simplicity, he that rules with diligence, he that shows mercy with cheerfulness. Let love be without dissimulation. Abhor that which is evil. Cleave to that which is good. Be kindly affectioned one to another, with brotherly love, in honor, preferring one another. Not slothful in business, fervent in spirit, serving the Most High. Rejoicing in hope, patient in tribulation, continuing instant in prayer, distributing to the necessity of saints, given to hospitality. Bless them which persecute you, bless and curse not. Rejoice with them that do rejoice, and weep with them that weep. Be of the same mind one toward another. Mind not high things, but condescend to men of low estate. Be not wise in your own conceits. Don't pay anyone evil for evil. Provide things honest in the sight of all men. If it is possible, as much as lies in you, live peaceably with all men, peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Most High. Therefore, if your enemy hunger, feed him. If he thirst, give him drink, for in doing so, you shall heap coals of fire on his head. Be not overcome of evil, but overcome evil with good. That was all of Romans chapter 12. Our lesson today is going to be on Romans chapters 12 and 13, but our Father wanted me to start with what His Word says and expound on that for our understanding. So, what we're going to do is use the remaining time that we have for this session looking at the ramifications of Romans chapter 12. Last time we spoke, we were meditating on the 91st Psalm, the secret place of the Most High. And as we said the last time, this is the psalm that is uh, our theme psalm, if you will, for the remainder of this calendar year, this Gregorian calendar year. So we're going to be meditating on continuously and relating continuously our souls to what is written in Psalm 91. So even as we look at Romans chapter 12, we're doing so with that mindset. And so the last time we were in meditation on the Shabbat, we were warned that we're in a state of war. We are now living in a state of war. And so we talked about what that looks like when it comes to our specific people and how that war is being waged. And so we looked at the attack on the family, because from the very beginning of our sojourn on the earth as human beings, but also as the people of the Most High, when the enemy attacks the most vulnerable place and the most effective way of neutralizing the people of the Most High is to attack the very place where the Most High has given the nature of his kingdom, and that place is the family. So Satan, the evil one, Hasatan, always will be looking at how to destroy the family. The best way to destroy the family in the long run is to cut off the capacity for reproduction. And that's why when we were talking last time, we took the time to mention that in our community, the act of war on our community was with the relationship between men, women, and children, because that is what a family is. And the fact that we're even contemplating different ways of identifying what a family is, that is a satanic problem that has been inserted into our community. But the way that that has been playing itself out, it's starting with, if you eliminate the seed, you have in essence destroyed the family. So we talked about that. We talked about not just that from the standpoint of abortion, but we talked about it from the standpoint of the ramifications of all of that. So we're not going to go over that again, but we need to understand that is an act of war. That is an act of war on our people. And when you look at what our people are dealing with right now, the other main place of neutralization is taking the men out of their families. You can either do that by abortion, you can do it by a school system that has been directly related to the prison industrial complex, and it's all driven by the fact that if you take the man out of the house, then you actually have destroyed the family. So we are living in that time. As a result of that, the job of the seer, the job of the watchman on the watchtower, is to tell the people, this is an act of your enemy. Your enemy is continually coming at you like this, but it's not just for information's sake. There's something else that needs to happen. We can repair this. Okay. There's no point in us looking for other people to repair us. The Most High has already provided a way of reparation for us. Okay. And it's in his word, which is why he wants us reading his word. The answer to our questions, the antidote to the war that is being waged against us has already been given to us in Ephesians. We're not warring against flesh and blood. We cannot continue to spend our time and our energy trying to make people who are of flesh and blood the focal point of our existence. The enemy is Satan, Ha-Satan. And so that's why the only thing that neutralizes Ha-Satan is the word of the Most High. And that's how we get to Romans. Okay, so we're going to be looking at Romans chapter 12 and chapter 13, but we've already talked about, we've already read what Romans chapter 12 says, but we're going to be focusing in this session on primarily two issues. One of them has to do with transformation, and the other has to do with being renewed. So when we look up that word, when it says, again, I'll read it in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of Yahweh. Okay, so the two words that we're looking at are transformed and renewed. The Greek word transformed is metamorpho, and it means to change into another form. It also means to transfigure. If you remember when Yeshua, Jesus, Yehoshua, however you want to pronounce that word, when he was on the mount with Peter, James, and John, the scriptures say he was transformed or transfigured before them. And that's when his body began to glow, and they looked. What they saw was Yeshua, Moses, and Elijah. That's how he was transfigured. Okay. And in the end, what the Most High told them was, this is my beloved son, listen to him. And as that vision that they saw, and it was a real vision, okay, they went up to a real mountain. Jesus transfigured himself into into his fullness for them. And what they were able to see is the fullness that Jesus is. So they described it as a light that was shining through this cloud, but they also saw that coming in that light and from that light were two other people that they identified as Moses and Elijah. Now, why is that important to what we're talking about? To transfigure is the same word as metamorphosis. When I was a child, I was watching this caterpillar because we didn't have a lot of other distractions. So we were closer to the land, even in a place of the place of my birth, which was not a city. We were closer to the land than certainly our people are today. So part of the blessing of being a child is you see stuff that's obvious to you, but may not be obvious to the adults. So I'm watching this caterpillar turn around and eventually envelop itself into a cocoon. And then at a later point in time, I watched from that same cocoon that I was looking at, okay, I saw it open up. And what came out of that cocoon was something different than what had created the cocoon. I witnessed the metamorphosis of a caterpillar moving into a butterfly. And it was all the same entity. It was the same entity, the same energy in a different form. That's what metamorphosis is. That's what Peter, James, and John saw on that mountain. They saw Jesus wrap himself and then come out of that wrapping into who he actually is. They just didn't see it. That's why that's the same word that the Spirit is telling us in his body, what we call the church, or what we call Yasharel, what he calls Yasharel, excuse me. He says, I want you to be metamorphosed or transfigured, just like that caterpillar. Okay. So we know that that's more than a physical thing. So when it says, be not conformed to this world, but be transformed, then he tells us how, by the renewing of your mind. And this is why we're spending the time talking about that concept today. The renewing of the mind is the wrapping of the cocoon. What renews our mind? It comes from the word of the Most High. Okay. So as we wrap the word of the Most High around our souls, the soul is then able to metamorphose into its fullness. It is transfigured. Let me say a little bit more about when this was viewed from Peter, James, and John's perspective. What they actually saw is who Jesus really is for us as human beings. Jesus is the law because that's who Moses is. Jesus is the prophet. That's why the prophets are mentioned in scripture. But ultimately, he's the Most High. He is a representative of God on the earth. And that representative of God on the earth at that point in time was seen in its fullness. But more importantly, that representative of God in Yasharel was seen, in Israel that rules with God, in the prince that rules with God. So the prince was able to see this is who God is, but it's also who you are. You are a combination of the law and the prophets, and that comes directly from heaven. So, what we are being told in Romans chapter 12 is don't be like the world. Do not be conformed to the world, but be transformed, then renewed. Now, how does it happen? He says, in the spirit of your mind, or renewing of your mind. There's a Bible verse in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 23. And I'm going to turn to that and read it for you. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 23 says, well, no, I'm going to read it starting at verse 22. That you put off concerning the former conversation, the old man, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust. Now, continue to have in your mind the picture of a caterpillar in its cocoon. Okay, that's what we are to put off. Okay, so it says put off concerning the former conversation, the old man. So the caterpillar goes in as the old, which is corrupt according to the deceitful lust. And then verse 23, and be renewed in the spirit of your mind. And so what the renewed part is what comes out of the old, which is coming out from the spirit. And that's what the spirit is telling us. So we're renewed in the spirit. Excuse me for that typo. I didn't see that until just now. To be renewed in the spirit of our mind. All of this happens in the mind. Okay. So the transformation happens in the mind. And that which is renewed, it says the word renewed is the Greek ananeo, which means to make young or to renovate. Again, think about the caterpillar. What is being said is that the caterpillar goes in as the old and comes out or is renovated or is made young as the new butterfly. So just as the Most High has given us as that as an example, in the physical sense, that's what we are to let or allow to happen to us in the spiritual. So rather than a bunch of caterpillars crawling on the ground for eternity, we are to turn into butterflies, a completely different perspective, if you will. The caterpillar has its place, okay? Its place is to eat enough to turn into the butterfly. Okay. The butterfly has its place. Its place is to get strong enough to reproduce. And when the reproduction happens, another caterpillar comes in. And so that cycle continues. And so it's a cycle of renovation. All right. That's what the Most High wants for his people. And all of that happens in our mind, but it all happens in our mind, coming into our mind by the Spirit of the Most High. Okay. So the image that we produce is akin to that of the butterfly. So as caterpillars, we can't do what we're supposed to do. That's why he doesn't want us to remain caterpillars. That's why he has given us a way in the spirit to wrap ourselves in his word so that his word can transfigure us into that which we have always been. Okay. And that's a key part. Okay. It's not creating something new. It's continuing the cycle of life. That's what he wants his people to know and to understand. All right. So that nugget, don't be conformed to this world. This world is a world of caterpillars. Now, but it starts that is a first step, but the overarching theme is, first you have to present your body as a living sacrifice. We have to be willing to allow this process to take place. That's our spiritual service. That's how we serve the Most High. We serve the Most High by surrender. And that is what we don't want to do as caterpillars, with that same analogy. Okay, so the way that we present our bodies as living sacrifices is what we're talking about today during this session. So not being conformed to the world, being transformed by the renewing of our mind. And in that process, as we begin to wrap ourselves, here's one of the things that starts happening, because we're wrapping ourselves in the word. Okay, which means that we have to know the word. We have to study the word. It's the word that we wrap ourselves in, and which also means that we have to believe that the word comes from heaven and not from men. It comes through men. It doesn't come from men. Okay, so the word from heaven is what we wrap ourselves in. As we do that, what happens is we stop thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought. We stop thinking that we, either as an individual or as a people group, are the center of the universe. And that's why the scriptures say, don't think more highly of yourself than you ought. Understand that actually you're a member of a body. What body? The body of the transfigured. And everything that's related to that caterpillar is connected. There are things that make the caterpillar the caterpillar. And those things the scriptures call grace. In other words, the caterpillar does not create its own grace. It's grace that creates the caterpillar. It's grace that creates this body of believers that the Most High created. And that starts with Yasharel. It doesn't end with Yasharel. And this is why when the scriptures say, don't think more highly of yourself than you ought, that's for Yasharel too. Yasharel, you have to understand your position in all of this. You're not the center of the universe. You're not even the center of the world. You're the Most High's point of contact for his world. It's not yours, but he is always going to use that which he has created in order to carry out his will. So our job is to present our bodies, Yasharel, as living sacrifices. That's our spiritual service. It's not following rules and regulations. The rules and regulations come as a result of our love for the Most High. That's why the scriptures tell us, and that's why it is absolutely so important that we see the entire counsel of the Most High, not just the so-called Tanakh or the Old Testament, not just the so-called New Testament or the Gospels. It's the entire counsel, because that is the process of life. If you set yourself in the caterpillar mode, because caterpillars are real, okay? The law and the prophets are real, but the law and the prophets were to assist in bringing forth the butterfly. Yasharel, you're not supposed to stay a caterpillar. And that's what some of you without the spirit are doing. How do you get the spirit? By your spiritual service is presenting your body a living sacrifice. What does that mean? It means stop trying to figure this stuff out on your own. Stop making all of these claims of who God is and what God does based on your trauma-driven understanding of scripture. The scriptures can't be understood with human trauma. The scriptures can only be understood by a relationship with the Most High. So even as the Most High is waking his people up and saying, yeah, you're the people that I chose to be my point of contact, so that you could bring the Messiah in, and so that the Messiah could turn you from where you are into where he can use you. That's the process. Okay. So that understanding that we're giving is that we are part of a body. That body includes more than just Yasharel. Yasharel is an important component of that body and that process, but Yasharel is not the focus. And I'm going to say that again. Yasharel is not the focus. The focus is Jesus Christ. The focus is Yeshua HaMashiach. That he is the focus, because he's the one that takes us into the presence of the Most High. Without him, we can't get into the presence of the Most High. So in the body that the Most High has created, he has those of us who prophesy. He has those of us who serve. He has those of us who teach, the mores. He has those of us who have the ministry of encouragement. He has those of us who have the wherewithal to give in a big way. He has those of us who serve as the leaders of the various groups, and he has those of us who know how to give and to practice mercy. All of that is included in the body of Christ. So please, when you are talking among yourselves, remember your place. One of these things one of these areas you will find yourself in, you will not find yourself in all of them. Okay. So the mores are not the same thing as the leaders. Please understand what I'm saying. Okay. Those who prophesy may not have the capacity to teach what they prophesy. They may say, thus says the Lord, but a teacher has to come along and explain what they just said. That's why the scriptures say y'all can get up and prophesy, maybe no more than 2 or 3, but only if you got somebody who can interpret. Who's the interpreter? The teacher. Okay, so everybody has a place. And what's going on right now is that in each one of our discrete areas and circles of friends and like thinking people, we have decided that we're all of these things. So you still have the situation where we are cut off for our parts. There's no spirit in that. And so what the Most High is doing during this year is he is blowing his spirit over his people. And part of the blowing of his spirit over his people is to say, stop thinking more highly of yourself than you ought. So how do we know when that's happening? A lot of it has to do with how we are going to treat our enemies. Okay. The scriptures say, treat your enemy the way you want to be treated. So yes, overcoming evil cannot be done with evil. Once we understand who the enemy is, we understand that the way that the enemy works benefits the enemy. And if we work the way that the enemy works, the enemy always wins. Our victory is in Jesus, is in Yeshua. Our victory tactics are in Yeshua. He's the one that says, don't overcome evil, but overcome evil with good. Okay, so we didn't read the 13th chapter, but just quickly, and we'll probably come back and maybe do some of the 13th and move into the 14th and 15th for our next session. But the 13th chapter talks to us, especially to me, about things that I'd rather not do. Okay. It says submit to governing authorities because they're the Most High's servants. That to me in the flesh is anathema. It's the worst possible thing that you can ask me to do, because I know how evil this system is, and I know that it's continually positioned to destroy me as an individual and me as a person of a specific people group. So I don't want to do that. But that's why the scriptures tell me to present my body a living sacrifice. The Most High is telling me, and I would suggest anyone else that wants to hear, he understands all of what I just said. And he says, now that you've got it out of your system, do what I tell you to do. Submit yourself to the governing authorities. And if you remember, the people who heard this message were living in the belly of the beast. They were living in Mystery Babylon, the Roman nation. All right. Now we are living in Mystery Babylon, called the United States of America, but it's the same thing. So he told the people of the Most High then, just like he's telling us now, the people who I want you to submit to are not righteous. They are only evilly inclined continually. Submit to them anyway. Because when you do that, you are showing a love that is not emotion based. It is a love of my word, which is what has told you to do this. Okay. So when that happens, you then fulfill all of the law, which means you're not going to commit adultery. You're not going to have other gods before you. You're going to follow the precepts that I laid out before you. You're going to acknowledge the days of feastings, the feast day, the so-called feast days. But from the perspective, the same perspective that the Most High said, submit to the governing authorities. I do all of that for the exact same reason, because you told me to. Okay. So when that happens, love does fulfill the law. And that's when Yasharel finally begins to awaken, because we realize that our salvation is near. He's not going to leave us in harm's way. Okay. But he wants us to behave decently. He wants us to stay sober. He wants us to live righteously when it comes to sexual purity. He does not want us in 24/7 dissension and contention with one another. And he certainly does not want us being jealous of the other, which is what covetousness is. Okay. But instead, getting back to the analogy of the caterpillar, we are to wrap ourselves with the master. Okay. So that in doing so, we become transformed into that which appears to be a new being, but actually it's that which is the fullness that we've always had in us. So we're going to stop the lesson, the meditation for this session. We give thanks to what the Father has given to us. Father, bless you and keep you. Father, make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. Father, lift up his countenance upon you and give you his shalom.